Hello everybody, welcome to Catherine Sews. Thank you so much for joining me today. Today I want to make the perfect white t-shirt. I made this t-shirt using variations that I had made to the Stellan tee, which is a free pattern, a PDF download from a website called French Navy. So the Stellan tee has a great size range. It goes from the smallest size of a 31.5 inch bust or 80 centimeters to their largest size, which is a 59.5 inch bust or 151 centimeters. So a really nice size range. It has a nice curved hemline, which I think is pretty. It's got a good boxy fit, which you can alter as much as you want. So about 3 years ago, I made a video where I took the Stellan tee and did some fitting on it and then some variations. Now, I'm going to link to that video below because it's good. It's got some great information in it and great ways of altering a pattern that shows you all kinds of variations you can make to a t-shirt. I have to give you a couple caveats though. That video has kind of terrible sound in it. I was trying a different mic. It was terrible. And I was still putting music in the background of my videos. I only do the music now at the beginning and end because enough people told me like, that's really irritating, and they're right, it is. So that video has those two problems with the audio, but it is good information. But what didn't really work for me was the drop shoulder. If you're comfortable with a drop shoulder, then you're good to go. But in the video where I did the variations on it, I picked up that shoulder. So the beginning part of that video shows you how you can pick up the shoulder just to make what for me ended up being a much neater fit. I also shortened the sleeve in that video to make a cute little cap. Looking at this one now, though, I might pinch out a little bit of the width at the bottom of that cap sleeve. So I'll show you that right now as well. Another difference between this and the original Stellan tee pattern is that I dropped the neckline by about 3 inches from the original Stellan tee pattern. The original Stellan tee is not too high. It's not choky and uncomfortable, but I just think a scoop neck for me is just a little bit more flattering. So I'm going to encourage you to download that Stellan tee pattern or find any basic t-shirt pattern that works well for you. Make it up in a t-shirt knit, like just a basic t-shirt knit that has about the same amount of stretch that you would use for your good t-shirt. And then do whatever tweaks you need to do to make it fit nicely around your shoulder, around your bust line, around your waist, the length. Do whatever tweaks you want. Make those adjustments to the pattern piece, and then you'll be ready to go and cut out your t-shirt in your good knit. The knit that I'm using is this baby rib knit that I bought from a sustainable fabric supplier here in the Vancouver area. They do sell online, and this is their fabric of the month. So I think it's still on, at least for a couple more weeks, it's on for half price. So this piece that's just under a yard, it's about 0.8 of a meter, so about maybe 3/4 of a yard, cost me $3.20. So a deal that cannot be beat. So I'm going to go ahead and show you my process for just taking a little bit more out of that cap sleeve. I'll cut out my t-shirt, and then I'll show you just how fast it can be to whip this up on your serger. I only used the regular sewing machine for the hems of the sleeve and the bottom and for finishing off the neckline. I've been using a really nice technique for finishing necklines that I just love, where you kind of wrap the neckband around the edge of the t-shirt. It just works so nicely, and I think it's easier than the traditional neckband that I've always used. So there should be lots of good tips and tricks along the way, and you'll end up with the perfect t-shirt. So if that sounds good to you, then let's just jump right in. Okay, so let's start with me showing you how I'm going to just make that sleeve sit a little bit nicer. I pinned out a couple of like little darts out of the sleeve, and that's just going to sit so much better. So now I essentially just need to take those darts out of the pattern piece. So here's the little cap sleeve that I made from the Stellan tee, and then here's my t-shirt with those two little kind of like darts pinched out of it. So if I line the edge up with where seam allowance would be, that is the center of the fold. And so I'm taking out a little dart there, up to there. And this does not have to be exact. If it's anywhere in that neighborhood, it's going to be fine. And then again, there's the center. So about that much I'm taking off. And that one comes up to about there. So I'll just connect those points and then fold on one side of that dart and bring that over to the other side. And I don't want to be removing anything from the top. The top stays the same. And then I just need to smooth out that bottom edge. And then there's my corrected pattern piece. Alrighty, so both the back and the front need to be on a fold. So I've made one fold for the front, one fold for the back, and both folds are just wide enough to fit their pieces on. And then my fabric is about, I think it's at least 60 inches wide, so there's plenty in between here where I'll cut the sleeve. I've also made sure to leave a strip at the end wide enough for my neckband, so at least like a 2-inch strip at the end here. I used pins instead of weights because I knew I'd be moving this around a fair bit. And there's just a small notch at the shoulder, and I added another notch just to show me which was the front of the sleeve. For the neckband, I measured and made notes of the lengths of the front neck and the back neck. The front is 9 inches on the fold, or 18 total. The back is 4.5 on the fold, so 9 inches total. So that gives me a total circumference of the neckband of 27 inches. And I like to do the neckband 75% of that. So 75% of 27 inches is 20.25 inches, 20.25. I don't like to go any smaller than 75, so I'll just round that up. So I'll call that 21 inches for the neckband. I've been playing around with different widths to see what I like best. And I think 2 inches is kind of perfect. I've gone up to 2.5. I've tried 2.25. And I think I'm going to try again with just 2 inches. Cut off that little bit of selvage because it has little holes in it. So just cut that off. And then I said 21. I could even add 1/2 inch for seam allowance, so 21.5. Okay, good. That's everything. Now, this fabric does not have a right and a wrong side because it's a ribbing. It's the same on both sides. So I can just fold that band in half. It's ready to go. And then I'll take the back. Now I don't have a right and a wrong side, but if you do, you'll lay the back right side up and put the front right side down against it. So you're bringing those two right side together and just matching up the shoulder seams. One more little thing that I will cut, and that's just a strip of the selvage. When you cut along the selvage, that's the lengthwise grain, and it has a lot less stretch than the crosswise grain does. So I'll be serging that little strip right into the shoulder seam, just so that that shoulder seam doesn't start to droop. Honestly, I think that's optional. I've never really had any trouble with that shoulder seam drooping, but a lot of people do prefer having a stabilizer in there. I'll clip over here too, but I will get that strip into here as well. Okay, I think we're ready to go right to the serger. Alrighty, so I've got poly cotton thread loaded into the serger and ballpoint needles. And my stitch length is just regular at 3, differential feet is at 1, so no special settings at all. And there's my shoulder seams that are right side together with that little strip on top of the front. I'll be pushing these seam allowances toward the back, so this strip is sitting on the front and then it doesn't have to fold. So just make sure you've got all 3 raw edges together. If the strip you're using has a little bit of stretch, you can give that a little stretch as you go, but not stretching the actual shoulder seam. And then I'm slipping under the strip the other side of the shoulder seam. Slip that right under and go. Make sure those edges are together and then give my strip just a little stretch. That's nice. Now to the iron. So now at the iron, I can just snip that and snip off the extra here. And then that little strip lays flat while the seam allowance itself gets pressed toward the back. And now we can set the sleeve. And then, as always, the first piece that you lay down is laying right side up. So this is the front over here, the back over there, shoulder seam. So now I want to take one of my sleeves, and I think that this is the easiest way to set a sleeve. Sometimes if the cap of your sleeve is very high and you have to do a lot of easing, then it is easier to sew your side seams and put your sleeve in that circle of the armhole. But if the sleeve cap isn't too high and you don't really have to ease, then I do think it's easier to just have it flat like this and right side together. So there's my little top notch going to the shoulder seam. That's the notch that I added to show me that this was the front of the sleeve, because when I was doing my fitting, I made a change in that front edge so that it was no longer symmetrical. Alrighty, so now just bring those corners together. Your sleeve is going to be like that. It's not going to volunteer to go together. So you have to just be the boss, bring your edges together and clip or pin, especially in the top of that curve, like the cap of the sleeve is where you have to just do some convincing and bring those edges together. And nice and evenly, like I kind of work it over my thumbs like that. If there is ease in the sleeve, ease meaning extra fabric in the sleeve that you have to ease in, then take a moment to make sure it's all distributed evenly. Then the other side, corners together. So pin your matching points first, right? The notches, the corners, and then pin in between. Good, so I'm going to pin both and then serge both. At the serger, I want to start at whichever end of the sleeve gives me the sleeve side facing up. This is the sleeve. If I had started at the other side, the sleeve is underneath. That can be a little bit dangerous on the serger because on the sleeve, you're going to get these extra folds of fabric. You need to be able to keep your eye on that because if that gets caught into the serging, you can cut and have a hole in your sleeve. It's very sad. So always serge with the sleeve side facing up so you can keep your eye on the extra folds of fabric. And this is why my notches are tiny, so that they get covered over by the serging. If you cut your notches long, you will have a hole. Okay, and this is the second sleeve, sleeve side facing up. Beautiful. Let's take that back to the iron. And now we're going to press that seam allowance going toward the body. And because I serged with the sleeve side facing up, that also means that it's going to be the good side of the serging that's showing, the nicer side. So that's a little bonus. And now before I serge the side seams, it's easiest if I serge the bottom edge of the sleeve now rather than serging it around the circle later. So I'm going to head right back to the serger and serge that bottom edge. So just right across the bottom edge of both sleeves. Looking a little loopy here, so I just tightened up both of the loopers, changing the tension to 4 on both loopers. So now it's the side seams, so I want to match those edges. When I serge this seam, I'll be trimming off all those threads, so I don't worry about it right now. But match those, match up the 2 seams, and keep the seam allowance going the way I pressed it toward the body. Bring out the tail of serging so it also gets trimmed off. And then right down to the bottom corner. So pinning all those matching points first, and then in between. One thing I like to do is serge that seam and then serge the bottom edge and then serge the other side seam. Just for the same reason that I serge the bottom edge of the sleeve first. It's just easier to serge on a straight before it turns into a circle. So then right across the bottom with the good side facing up so that the good side of the serging shows inside your hem. And then I'm going to come back up the other side seam, and I could go back to my cutting table and pin it, or I can just grab those matching points as I go and organize myself as I go. So now that that corner's secure, I just find my 2 underarm seams, hold those together, and then find the center point and hold that. It's the same thing as pinning. I haven't let go of that matching point, and so I know I'm still good. And then my 2 corners at the end here, just make sure those are nicely matched. So now all we have left is the hems and the neckband. So here's my neckband that I had pinned together right at the start. Good. And we'll give that little seam a press. Now with that little seam pressed flat, I'm going to serge all the way around one edge of this. And I'm going to try not to stretch as I go. So I have the shirt right side out, and I've gone ahead and quarter marked it by bringing shoulder seam to shoulder seam and putting a tiny notch right at that center. That's the center front. And I also put a tiny notch right at the center back. And then I brought those 2 notches together and put a little notch right at the halfway point on both sides. And then the band I've also quarter marked. The seam is the center back, and then opposite that is a notch for the center front. I brought those 2 points together and put a notch at both halfway points. Good. So both are divided into 4 equal sections. And now the band is going to go right side together with the t-shirt. The seam goes to that center back notch. There's the halfway point notch, the center front notch, and the other halfway point. So all matching points are pinned. And now you can just give a gentle stretch, catch your edges halfway between, and put a pin in the middle of each of those sections. So the fullness of the neckline is equally distributed all the way around. So now I want to be sewing right about in here at the 15 line or 5/8 line, so that this piece can then wrap over and wrap, and my serged edge will just get caught when I stitch in the ditch. I have to keep my edges together, and I can put a little bit of a stretch on it as I go. But again, I'm using the ballpoint needle, but I am just using a straight stitch because this is going to get sewn around 3 times. So once I get that little bit of a stretch, I want to make sure my eye stays right there at my guideline. I want to make sure that my seam allowance of that shoulder seam, including that little strip, stays the way I pressed it and goes under the needle nice and flat. So at this point, I want to just give a little test wrap. If it's not coming around enough, like if my serged edge is barely covering that line of stitching, then what I would have to do is trim down my seam allowance a little bit so that I can wrap that further over. So with the t-shirt over the pointy end of the ironing board, the seam allowance is naturally just going to be going up, and that's how I want to press it. And then, can you see this? It looks really ripply. Now it doesn't. Looking terrible. Now looking okay. Good. So now I want to take my serged edge and just cover that line of stitching. And then from the outside, I'm going to put a pin right in the ditch, right in the valley of that seam there. And your pins should be parallel to the seam like that, not going perpendicular, because you just want to be pinning right in the ditch, right like that. Get everything sitting nice as you go. The seam allowance goes in, the serged edge goes over, looking nice. Now, before you do all of this neck edge, really you should have tried it on by now. Make sure that the neck is where you want it to be. If you wanted it any lower, any more scooped, definitely you want to take care of that before you go to all of this trouble, right? I know that I like this neckline. I am wondering about the body though, because this baby rib feels a lot stretchier than what I'm used to. So before I finish the hem, I'm going to try it on and see if I want to do any fitting around the body. So there are times when you don't have to pin, like on that last side seam I did, but this neck binding is not one of those times. You really need to pin around the whole way, make it look good all the way around. And now I'm going to be sewing right in the ditch. Alrighty, I'm starting on the back just to make sure that everything's going well before I get to the front. I'm sinking my needle down right into the ditch and then lowering my presser foot. Now there's a little notch right here on my presser foot that's just ahead of the needle. That's where I'm going to keep my eye. That little notch needs to just ride right along the ditch. So don't watch the needle because by then you're too late. You want to watch that little notch in your presser foot. And I think I said that I'd be sewing around here 3 times, but I guess I was including the serging in that because really this is it. But it's nice and stable. It feels great. Okay, so I'll just check around and make sure that I didn't sew up on the edge at all. And if I did, I might have to remove a few stitches. Oh, see right there. Can you see that? I don't love that. But you know what? That's right where I started, right at the beginning. And it's on the back. And I have long hair. So I'm not going to let that bother me. But if it was on the front, I would definitely fix that. And it's just a matter of removing a few stitches and then replacing your line of sewing there. No big deal. Okay, final press to the neck. And even here, it still looks ripply. But once I press it, and especially once I have it on, it's going to sit really, really nicely. Okay, beautiful. So I did just try it on, and the body fits just great. So I'm just doing the hems, and then we're done. So on the bottom edge, I'm just turning up about pinky finger width and sewing right up on top of that serged edge. And again, I'm just going to use a straight stitch. The serging gives it quite a bit of stability, and I'm going to give a little bit of a stretch as I go. You can use something like a lightning stitch or a stretched out zigzag, but I think this is going to be just fine. Make a nice shape with your hands. Organize as you go. So again, it looks kind of bumpy. Doesn't look beautiful yet, but the iron's going to take care of that. And on the bottom of the sleeve, when I cut the serger tails, I leave a little bit so that I can tuck it in and it's more secure. And on the bottom of the sleeve, it's straighter. You know, the hem on the t-shirt is curvy, so a smaller hem is better. But on the sleeve, it's a straight edge, more or less. It does have a little bit of a curve, but I want to do a bit of a deeper hem so that it doesn't roll. So I'm going to do, I'll call that thumb width. And again, just a gentle stretch on it as I go around. Final press, and then we're done. Here's my wiggly looking hem, which does not look very nice at all. But now it looks beautiful. Okay, that was pretty quick. And we're looking good. Let me show you the finished product. Well, did I do it? I set out to make the perfect t-shirt. Did I do it? I kind of think I did. I love the neckline, love the little sleeves. The body fits great. I could take it in the waist, but why, right? I would only be more self-conscious, so I might as well leave the boxier fit. That is just great by me. I'll put a link to our social fabrics where I got this baby rib knit, got that piece for $3.20, and at least for a little while, it'll be the fabric of the month at half price like that. I'll also, of course, leave the link for the Stellan tee and for the video where I did the alterations to the Stellan tee to get to this point. So hopefully that inspired you to buy yourself a serger because you deserve it and you're gonna love it. But if that's not in the cards for you right now, you can make this whole project on your regular machine. You're just going to sew your seam like normal and zigzag the edge to make sure your seams don't break, that the thread doesn't break when the fabric stretches. Just give that little stretch as you're sewing. You can use something like a stretched out zigzag. I use that sometimes, where the width is only about 1, but the length is 2, 2.5. And so it's like stretching out that zigzag. It kind of reads like a straight stitch, but it'll give you a good seam on a t-shirt knit. So that's it for this week. I'm so glad you're with me right till the end. Thank you so much. And until next time on Catherine Sews, you take care.